Welcome to the Comic Binge. I am your host, Paul Herman, and today we are going to be in mourning of a Superman who died and came back. But it doesn't matter because today we are talking about the infamous, maybe one of the most well-known Superman stories of all time. For better or for worse, I don't know. We'll find out in this episode. But yes, we are talking about the death of Superman. And it's not going to be an extensive book reading we'll be doing because it's only read like probably, 4 or 5 issues. We'll give you all the details. Hint, hint. Chris. Editor's note, wink, wink, for me if you don't mind. Anyway, if you could go ahead and appreciate everyone who's already been here. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit distracted because it's a little crazy outside. But if you haven't already, I'd appreciate if y'all. Oh, geez, I don't know what happened there, but hold on. Before we get too crazy here, y'all, let me just say, please go subscribe to the Comic Binge. It only makes sense here for us because that's what we do. That's just what happens. So please go subscribe, like the video, yada yada yada, all that jazz. So without further ado, let's get our things rolling here. So okay, we have of course the normal co-host. We've got Mr. Chris Clow. Chris, how are we doing today, sir?
Oh, hanging it in there. Mourning a friend again for the 1,000th time. I don't know. I've read this story a lot, so this is not exactly new territory, but it's good territory. So lots to talk about.
You know, I'm gonna coin that. I'm gonna trademark that. It's not new territory. It's good territory. I like that. Let's try to use that maybe in the future. Let's keep doing that. All right. So anyway, that's the Reverend. All right. So we've got El Corazon himself, the Heart, Javi. How are we doing today, sir?
Up and away, man. I've read like 1,000 pages of Superman comics at least in the last 2 weeks. So,
what else have you read?
The City of Tomorrow, volumes 1 and 2, basically the start of the Loeb Kelly run, which is collected in 2 volumes, which is now going to be a compendium coming out in a few months. That's 925 pages, I think, right there.
Wow.
Plus all the issues of this, plus, keeping up with the family. I just read Superman 24 today. I picked it up at the comic shop, and they are cooking.
Dude, I've got a bunch of trades that I need to catch up on. I'm excited to read because I've been so into Superman lately with the current stuff with oh my gosh, Josh Williamson and Kennedy, and I know Aaron came in, and then now Wade's coming back. It's like it's legit. It's super legit. So I'm super excited.
And your boy Slot next month too starts. A little trepidations.
Listen. I'll defend Slot, but I'm a little. I was reminded of something he did recently that I kind of got pissed off about again. Do you want to know what that is?
Sure, lay it on.
It's not Spider-Man related. It's FF related.
Oh, okay.
Nope. FF. He made Franklin not a mutant. That pisses me off still.
More than Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom?
It's actually in the ballpark, in my opinion. Honestly, it pisses me off because I'll save that for next week. So anyway, of course, it's good to see you. Last but not least, my old friend, old cohort, gentleman himself, Josh Costella. How are we doing today, Josh?
Good, very good.
Thanks
for bringing me back.
Of course. I had to get you on, man. Like I wanted, it was great having you on for a minute for the Deadpool stuff, and then now, I knew I was like, we were talking about getting you on the show again. You got excited about Superman. I was like, hey, we'll get you on. I got Superman hat going. I know you're a big a big Snyder guy, and listen, like I don't know if you ever watched me and Chris's video where we reviewed Snyder Cut, and I don't know if you've seen me talk about this on social media at all. I freaking love Snyder Cut, straight up, like love it, love it, love it, love it. The only thing I don't like about it is the ending. I don't love like the extra stuff at the end, but I get it. He can do what he wants, again, whatever. But I love that thing to death, and so I'm glad it exists. I'm glad it's there, and I'm glad that you get the hat. The hat's good.
Thanks. I mean, so, I will say I'm super looking forward. I mean, I didn't mean to say that. That wasn't a pun intended thing, but I'm very much looking forward to the new film. Like,
cool.
Very, very much.
That's awesome.
I've worn out my computer watching that trailer, so I'm ready.
It's really good. It's a very good trailer. It's a very good trailer, and I think that it's actually a great segue. Because let's just talk about. I just want to get your quick thoughts about the movie coming up, because obviously we're doing the countdown to Superman, and that is something that we're I wanted to do and get people ready, because I think, and I've talked about this before the show with you, is this is meant for us to get people excited for the comic book or the movies, by getting the comic book into or getting comics and people getting that ready for them and everything. So what's cool is this series is about getting them ready, and I'm curious with you with Superman coming up here, what you're excited, like what about this kind of as someone who loves the Zack Snyderverse, and I know you're a big fan of that, what about this new iteration with James Gunn gets you excited? What you're looking forward to most?
I mean, I think it's. Firstly, it's the reins were turned over to a well-accomplished filmmaker who has made very, very good films over the last several years, and he seems to be very, very passionate about the subject material, and he seems to want to do a really good job, with all this, and he's taking on quite a lot of responsibility. And I don't envy that. I mean, you're already doing a job where you're probably going to piss off half the people anyway. So it's a tall order. But I think Gunn is approaching it with a lot of just confidence and belief in his vision and the story that he wants to tell. And ultimately, when it comes to these movies, like, to me, is like, as long as the filmmakers are truly bought in to their vision, and they're able to actually craft the story that they want to tell, and it's not done by committee, and it's not a manufactured product, that a lot of these films have become, unfortunately, then I'm all for it. Like, and then seeing what the trailer was, and not really having any expectations other than just that this was gonna happen again. It was a very pleasant surprise. It felt very it obviously played a lot on nostalgia, but at the same time gave a lot of fresh things that we haven't seen with a live action Superman before. Just out of the gate, even down to like the reimagining of the Williams theme, a more modernized version of that, which sounds, I mean, even if that's just a snippet of what's to come, I mean, it sounds awesome. So like, yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for it. I really do. I think it seems like a really good cast. Yeah, I think it's got everything going for it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's kind of that's a good segue into the story here, because I think Superman has been tried. They've tried different avenues for different levels of success, obviously, and I think it's cool that they're trying a different way to do things, right? And I think that's kind of the way we just got to figure out like what they're. Hopefully, they'll figure out this is a different iteration, and they can find those right things and I want exploit's not the right word, but that's kind of what take advantage, I think, of what of all those things. So So anyway, Chris, I'm gonna throw it to you. We knew when we started this whole experience. Um, I think we all knew this was going to be on the docket for when we covered this story, and you did such a great job last time of giving us kind of a little bit of background on this and to kind of set us up for our conversation. Why don't you kind of do the same thing here and kind of get us ready for our little bit of a deep dive into this, these few issues of the story, which I'll throw up here, which you so kindly put on the screen, but we're reading. So yeah, go ahead and give us a little what's the word, appetizer for this conversation.
Well, the story as it goes is that DC knew that a new live action Superman TV show was going to be in production that was going to be a little bit more of a focus on the relationship between Clark and Lois. Guess what it was called? But the creative team it didn't sound like it was like an edict necessarily, but there was a desire to maybe try and align the eventual occurrence of the marriage between Superman and Lois with what they were going to do on the show. But it became pretty clear pretty fast that the time that the Superman bullpen spent breaking that story all of a sudden had like a year that they needed to fill or more. So they were trying to figure out what to do, and they were kind of frustrated by it. And who was it? Was it John Bogdanovich, I think, that just made, I guess, maybe it wasn't Bogdanovich, but there was a writer in the writer's room who, whenever they would get frustrated or whenever they would hit a wall, he would just go, let's just kill him. And for whatever reason, in that moment, at that time, with that like Herculean task in front of them to try and come up with a year's worth of stories, they all just kind of went, you know what? Yeah, let's kill him. And there was kind of a philosophy among some members of the creative team and the editor who was overseeing the line at the time, Mike Carlin, that people had started taking Superman for granted. Now, granted, we're roughly 6 years into the post-crisis era by this point, or 7, give or take. And so Superman has been effectively refreshed, but John Byrne is gone. And
only 7 years?
85 to 92. Yeah.
My math sucks, dude. It feels like it's 10 years.
86 is when Man of Steel happened, and Byrne was on the books for a while. But then, by that point he had been gone for a while. And so as it went, really the first phase of this additional slate of stories was the actual death. Really the majority of the narrative material is everything that happens after the death. The death is really just kind of a means to an end, and I think that that's pretty reflective if you read the story in its totality. It's like a phone book size omnibus that I've got behind me, and the actual death, the portion of the story that ends with Superman being killed by Doomsday, is a very small portion of that. But naturally, this is really an instance where I struggle to think of another instance in comic book history, certainly modern comic book history, where mainstream culture became obsessed with the current monthlies. Because as soon as DC let slip that they were going to be killing Superman, you had major media outlets that were covering it. It was lampooned on comedy shows, and they ended up printing something like 3 million copies, I think, total across all of the print runs of the book. It went back to press multiple times, which was not particularly common. And it caught the imagination really of the country at a time that comics had really been kind of reset in the early 90s. So the thing that's just striking to me about the death of Superman in particular, and the thing that I think keeps people coming back to it, in addition to all of the interest that it generated because of what DC was going to do. And granted, Superman had died in the comics before in previous eras, but applying this modern lens at the time with the creative team that just I really feel is firing on all cylinders between Jerry Ordway and Dan Jurgens and John Bogdanovich and Louise Simonson. My God, Louise Simonson is extremely good over the course of all of these stories. You had a tale that was very narrowly curated to elicit a maximum emotional response. And it is in everything from the dialogue, but to me, the most clever thing, and I think it was Dan Jurgens' idea, although I'm not completely 100% on it, was as you get closer to the moment of the death, the amount of panels on the pages of each issue lowers by 1. So it culminates in Superman number 75, where every page is a splash page. But the issue before that, it was 2 panels per page. The issue before that, it was 3 panels per page. And the subtle emotional tension that is ratcheted from that. The first time I read this as a kid, like I couldn't quite place what that was, but every time I revisit it, it's just such a brilliant stroke to try and amp up the insanity of what's going on. And the thing that really kind of stuck out to me this most recent time that I read it is just how violent this story really is. I mean, this is
no kidding.
Bloody, dirty, messy story. And I love how the early issues position Superman in such a way that it's, sort of the paragon of virtue. He's sort of angelic in the way that he is depicted, most especially there, right, among the clouds. And as the story goes on and it progressively gets closer and closer to the moment of his death, he is just run through the ringer. It's almost like you could see the dirt in his wounds. It's so grimy and it's so kind of gross in a couple of places. There's a couple of instances where he gets thrown away from Doomsday and the blood is just like pouring from his ribs after getting punctured. Doomsday splorching Matrix's face when she tries to defend Superman from him. It's nasty, but it's really evocative. And I think it's a kind of visual language that you're not necessarily used to seeing in a Superman story, but the violence is appropriately shocking. Like it's not over the top, but I think it effectively communicates exactly what the story is trying to convey, in that he's being put through a physical test like you've never seen. And, the cat was out of the bag because the media coverage spoiled what the story was going to end up doing. But in a way, I think that kind of added to the tension. I've spoken to people who were, in line to pick up that book when it came out. And there was really like this sense of dread that a lot of readers seem to have based on my conversations with them. And once it actually got to that moment where he does fall, and for this is the day that a Superman died, that's really where the larger story begins. But you couldn't get there unless this chapter really, really punched you in the face. And Jurgens' emotional conveyance in Superman number 75 is on point. The devastation in the city, but just the emotional devastation that the people closest to him clearly feel. It still manages to choke me up. Maybe not as much as it used to, but the raw emotion on display here and the heroism on display from Superman himself, it's very understandable why this story captured so many imaginations when it came out. Every subsequent attempt to adapt it until 2018 fell pretty flat on its face, in my opinion. The animated movie that Peter Tomasi wrote was a exception, the biggest exception. I actually think that movie is pretty awesome in terms of adapting the emotional reality of the initial story. But in most cases, there's nothing comes as I gotta be fair, I have not seen the Superman and Lois version of the Death of Superman. So
You're kind of missing out then.
good.
Spoiler alert. Jeez.
No, I'm legit. I'm
I
legit.
warned you, Paul.
Well, you were right.
I'm legitimately glad to hear that. But if you haven't seen the 2018 movie, the Reign of the Superman movie, I think is kind of take or leave. But the Death of Superman, that is actually written by Peter Tomasi, is an excellent adaptation, and it actually puts the real Justice. Sorry, my opinion.
How dare you talk about Bloodwind like that? How dare you?
Bloodwind is a real Justice Leaguer, as you find out later. But yeah, I mean, I remember
Bloodwind
and just being like, "Who are these people?" Now I know who they all are, of course. And
the biggest
I think
complaint
cool.
about the Tomasi one, I'm sorry, is the fact that it's New 52 ish.
Oh, well, stop!
Aesthetically, yeah. I mean, it's the New 52, but the way, I mean, the story ends.
But he did a good job fitting everything in.
Yeah.
Listen, how dare you speak ill of Ted Bond and Bloodwind and Booster Gold? Say the real Justice League stand up. Well, sir, I don't understand. Is that? Oh no, Ted Bond. That's a lead singer of a Christian rock band I used to like. Ted.
Get Ted Cord's name out of your mouth.
Ted Bond, Ted Cord, same difference. You know.
You.
Hold on, really quick. Is this the redheaded lady? What's her name?
Maxima.
Maxima. Is she the one that's in the Panic in the Sky?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I was reading this. I'm like, wait a minute. I recognize her. She's in Panic in the Sky. Oh, comes full. See, everyone, you get on the show, you're gonna get. It all comes back eventually. So
and
just
Guy Gardner too with his Cordian power ring. The basically, same kind of weapon that Sinestro.
It was Sinestro's ring, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Which
specifically, or was it just made by the Weaponers?
No, I thought it was Sinestro's specifically. Okay. Like that was one of the ads.
Gotcha.
So just for the record, I just want to say that I actually prefer that of Guy Gardner's the whole Guy Gardner thing of the yellow ring compared to a green ring. I kind of liked him being a yellow lantern. It really fit his aesthetic, I think, in my opinion.
Well, he wasn't a yellow lantern. He was just Guy
Well,
Gardner.
you know what I mean? Yeah, but he was rejected from like the Green Lanterns, right?
He wasn't rejected so much as he and Hal fought for the ring and Hal kicked his ass in Green Lantern 25. And then so he had to find another way.
So yeah, but that to me feels right for the character. Just saying.
I think that's primacy bias though, because that was the first time you saw Guy Gardner?
No, I recognize him from because I remember images of, like their early JLI run. I remember him being a Green Lantern, but I always thought his personality just fit for him to be not really a Green Lantern, but an outsider.
That's what makes him a good Green Lantern, though.
Anyway, that's a different podcast. We gotta get to other people's opinions here. So let's wrap this up. Are we done? Or what we got?
Yeah, I'm done.
You're done.
Good story. Okay. It's a good story. But don't confuse this for the whole story. That's my advice.
Yeah, that is accurate.
It's a 3-act play, and this is the opening act.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also the shortest act of the 3.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we and the thing was weird with this is I didn't know where to begin. Because I was given a trade very, very nicely by the driver himself. This is a giving person. He gave me the trade that he got from what's it called? DC Infinite, which is a great trade. And I was like, let's read this. I figured it was all the original issues. I'm like, it felt like a good thing. And you guys are like, well, wait, hold on. There's all this other stuff that got added into it. I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful cover. That's a fantastic cover.
Yeah.
Yes. It's Ivan Reis. Okay, that makes sense. It looks phenomenal. So anyway, keep hitting things. I wanted to read this. But I actually want to keep it short too, because I want people to kind of know they don't have to read a ton of it. So I'm gonna throw it to Josh here. Josh, you wanted in on this show specifically. We were talking about, I was asking you if, hey, what Superman stories would you want me to come on for? And I gave you a list and you went Death of Superman. I went, okay. So what about this series is special for you and to revisit it again? Chris, he's his own podcast. Hey, I've been trying real quick. Josh, sorry, what's that? Rick, it's for the record. I've been trying to have him do his own podcast on here forever. So just for the record, yeah. Josh, continue. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. So I think for me, this was like my first real active participation in Superman comics at the time. I think this was what, 92, 93, yeah. 92. So yeah, I was 9 when this came out. So yeah, this was, not really, I mean, watching Superman cartoons, like knowing the character, seeing the original Christopher Reeve movie, the old animated Superman episodes, cartoons and whatnot. So like I was well aware of the character. I had already had an affinity for the character. And yeah, this thing just kind of, it imprints on you, like I think it probably imprinted on everybody for the most part that was alive at the time. Because it became such a big deal. Like it was such a big thing to happen, even though technically he had died in other, previous eras, but for some reason this just captured it. It just got into the zeitgeist and it took hold. And then I think once the issues came out, and then you started to see the story come together, then it was like this, it just felt different. It felt different. It felt like this was something very big, very momentous, very, I was reminded just when I was reading this prior to coming on, I found myself at certain points, like I could feel the pace picking up. I could feel like the story like picked up momentum, and then all of a sudden it was like, you don't necessarily, I don't know. To me, it's like that's a surprising feeling for reading a comic book for me, like that it's like it was almost like it was live action, like it had that kind of pace to it. But yeah, I mean, long-winded answer of. This just really stuck out to me. This stuck out to me as a kid. Like it really did. It really made an impact on me. I remember like there's so many classic panels like this, that stick in your mind.
Still
like this guy, here, not an animal lover, right? Not into
yeah, obviously.
So, crushing the bird, crushing the deer neck, like the deer by his neck. I'm like, what's this guy's deal?
It kills me that you can see the bird's face when he's crushing it.
I know.
It would be easier if he just crushed the whole thing.
Yeah. And it was just like, okay, this guy. Also, I think it's interesting that none of the other heroes died, and most of them aren't even close to as powerful as Superman. But that's for another debate, I guess.
I can argue a little bit of that, but one thing I want to before I want to take
away from it. I get it; they weren't killing anyone else.
Well, a couple. I have we can say that for later. I think that is a
that got really close.
Yeah. But also, just for the record, none of them got as close to Superman on a continuous basis. No one just came in like I'm going to go in again and again and again. Like they met him once and they were like. They're out for the count. I felt that they did a decent job of establishing that, but again, that's just my own personal take. One thing I wanted to touch on that you said that Chris kind of mentioned too was the pacing of the story. And it felt live action, and I think I know the reason why is because when I've read this, every time I read this, I'm surprised at how well it reads. I know it sounds like a backhanded like you like this. oh my God. Like, I'm not trying to be like, this is a good comic, smack, 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 whatever. The thing about the story that is surprising is that it's designed to like be shocking, right? And what's coming. But what's so surprising about it is the pacing's done so well, like you're saying, Josh, and because it doesn't waste time. That's the biggest thing for me that I thought that a lot of, and I would say this, modern superhero comic writers, not the comic medium as a whole, because that's not what I'm saying. But if you're writing superhero comic books, and we're talking, and I'm saying specifically monthly, 22 page or 24, whatever, right? That the 18 to 22 page thing, these comic books, what, how many did we read, guys? We've got 4 or 5. We didn't read a lot. But there's so much character development, or there's so much movement and what's going on in every panel that it doesn't have time to waste. And then to Chris's point earlier, and to your point too, Josh, is that the pacing, it feels live action because what Chris was saying earlier, they kept reducing the amount of panels per page as it got closer. And when you do that, you have to depend on pacing, and like I have to really use the right panels to do it, right? You don't have to draw like, I'm gonna draw 8 panels on this just for the hell of it. Like there's an artistic merit to that, which is important. I don't ever want that to go away, but to be efficient storytellers in a layout when you're doing a comic book, sometimes the old saying less is more is true. And I think that's the one thing about it I want to emphasize on this is that great point by both of you. It's, the fact it is live action because there's not the panel structure is so cinematic because it's not so sequential. It's very like bump next page. And then we get to the
part of that too is also that it culminates in a fold out. Did the version that you guys read, did it have an actual?
Yeah, it had a fold out.
Yeah. So the omnibus has one too. It's not as big as what was in the original issue. I can't wait to see how they handle it in the Absolute later this year. Ooh. But I think that's a cool part of it too.
Yeah, I'll get a couple of things, let Josh fill it out, and then I'll let Javi have a say. Javi, can you throw like one of the pages from the last comic book, the 75, just like one of the one single pages, like splash pages, because that to me also it is an artistic brilliance to the comic book because it adds to that element of cinematic and that live action feel. Because when you get to that last comic book in 75, it is purely like right here, like it's just it's pretty much just this, like what, 20 pages. So we're just getting like, bam, just great images, right? And it's beautiful. And that is very much, that's the cinematic aspect of it that I think that is kind of lost. And I think when I reread it, and I'm kind of giving my own like feelings on the book as I interrupt Josh. I'm sorry, I'll throw it back to you in 1 second. But the thing about I'm surprised and how well I like this is how cohesive all the different artists are together. And on this last comic book, it really does build very well to that whole idea of the artistic way of like reducing the panels, and then splash pages for pretty much every page is a really novel idea, and it worked brilliantly. So I'm with you, man. Like I think I think the live action feel is a 100% accurate statement. So go ahead and finish out your thoughts on the series, and I'll throw it to Javi.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of touched on it a little bit, but it's like if you go back, like I'm just flipping back through, like even in the early issues, when it's first starting to kick off, like every panel, there's movement. There's some kind of movement happening, and oftentimes it's like a fast movement. And then that just builds. It just builds and builds and builds and builds to where every panel then there's like someone flying past, there's something flying past, there's someone getting thrown into something, there's some kind of violent action. I mean, and that's the thing. It's incredibly violent. Like it may not be like, gory people getting their heads cut off kind of thing, but like it is for this kind of audience. I guess, for this probably average comic book reader at the time. Like there's a lot of violence in this. And
Yeah.
I think that's part of, for me, like what sticks out about it too is just like, you're just like, holy shit, like this, like you, like Doomsday can't be stopped. Like, and there is
Mhm.
that doubt, even reading it. Even reading it yesterday, I was like, I was weird because it didn't even make sense, but it was like I was having that feeling. I'm like, dude, there's no way Superman's gonna stop this guy. like it was just
Right.
he's too much. And even though I knew what was coming, right? I mean, we've
Mhm.
known about this for 30 years, but it still, it really is I mean, I have a lot of quibbles. I have many quibbles, but overall, as a story, as a piece of work, collected piece of work, it's a fantastic piece of storytelling. Like it really is.
Yeah, and before I give it to you, Javi, I just want to say that this, for me, I'll be honest. We'll get your quibbles at the end here before after Javi gets done and Chris has a little bit to say. But I will say that for me personally, as I've read this a couple times now, it only gets better for me, and I don't really see the flaws as much because I think I give it maybe a little too much the benefit of the doubt because you're working with so many different writers and artists together, and they have to cohesively all build together in unison. And the fact that like they did it such a great job on such the most famous superhero of all time, the first superhero of all time, basically, and they do it and they deliver. I mean, that's the one thing I would say that people don't talk enough about this comic book because at the time this was coming out during an era of like, well, Superman's boring or this is that or these artists aren't as cutting edge as like the X-Men guys or no, that's what I'm saying though, right? Well, yeah, about Superman, yeah, whatever. I'll argue that all day. The thing is though, when you read to me, this story then wasn't dogged on really that much. It was more of like people dogged on the exploitation factor more than anything, and the storyline, in my opinion, got lost. The actual quality stories got lost in that controversy of the let's benefit and exploit the collector market, right? That to me is what's overshadowed this pretty damn good story, in my opinion. Like it's short, but it's pretty damn good and effective. So I think it's weird to me because when I don't see the flaws as much I'm sure, I mean, I could nitpick some things, I guess, but like when I read it, I don't have really any issues with it. So, but we'll save some of the qualms here for a little bit later, but Javi, I'll throw it to you. Give me your background and kind of your current affairs with the Death of Superman.
I'm going to push back a little bit on what you just said. And I'm not going to argue the fact that
How dare you?
this did cause a big speculator boom. I mean, DC is proudly advertised that it's like the greatest selling comic book or graphic novel of all time. They always switch between this and Watchmen as the greatest selling graphic novel of all time.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to deny that they, had a regular version, a newsstand version, a polybag version, a platinum polybag version. And, after we did Funeral for a Friend, they did, the die cut covers to launch the new 4 Supermen. Yeah, they were making money. But that's not what this trilogy is. Like there was so much heart
Agreed.
throughout, and they were telling like a story specifically. The covers and the chromium end for Superman 82, all that stuff it's just noise. Like the real heart of the story is this man, fighting for what he believes in, and this couple and their journey, back to each other. And as for like the story, I'm old, Paul. The story
Not
came
that
out
old.
over 30 years ago, and back when I was in high school, and I just talked about this recently on another show. And my brain's a little muddled, and looking at the dates of this 92, 93. Like it started in 92. Superman 75 has a triangle number 2 of 1993. I know I was kind of here for some of it. I'd gotten comics that just came out that were just before the Man of Steel issue that started it, because I remember we got it in like a giant DC comic pack at Costco, and it was like the 4 issues of Action Superman, Man of Steel that came out right before this one. And I actually really enjoyed those, and I forgot, because I always think of like Lois and Clark as the thing that made me give Superman another look. But really, this came out 2 years before that show, and I remember reading these and borrowing my friends' copies and picking the Cyborg Superman issue off the newsstands, and going to Costco and getting. They had 3 packs.
These. Yep.
That had Death, it had Funeral for a Friend, and it had Return to Superman, and I've read those so many times, and not only do they get better every time, but like the read gets quicker for the whole thing. Like it's a lot of comics.
I just want to chime in a couple things really quick. Because Eric said something here. I want to talk about real quick. Eric, yeah, you're right. I want to say for the record that the reason why this gets criticism is because what it led to, because this was like it was the speculator market was
just this though.
No, that's what I'm saying though. I'm saying that like this helped usher in that to the max. It pushed it to a 11, where it was it was already like to like a, was that?
Let's look back 2 years. 1990 Spider-Man #1 with its
foil cover
edition, its silver foil cover, its gold foil cover, its blue one, its red one.
The X-Men. The X-Men was the next year
with
X-Force
5 connecting covers that folded out. X-Men with its trading card bagged in there, so you didn't know which one you were going to get. Like, yeah, let's not kid ourselves that Marvel did it first. Yeah, with all these sales gimmicks, and caused that bubble to inflate.
Yeah, no, Superman was only escalate. It only put it faster, But and that's what my point was, is that it sucks because I feel the story does get muddled not because of that whole connotation. Now, the last thing I'll add before I let you call obvious, I just want to comment real quick, Eric. I really appreciate you commenting. This is awesome. The one thing I would say, I'm talking about the death of Superman only, not the whole thing. I'm talking about just literally the issues we're talking about earlier, which I'll bring up again. The editor's note that Chris did for us at the very beginning. That's all I'm talking about, Eric, is just the death of Superman. Because in a vacuum, for these stories only. Javi, continue. I apologize.
Where was I? I just
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Remind me.
I was going to say, you were talking about you've read the Death of, Return of a bunch of times, and it keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, and it's just there's so much repeat value, because I think when I read it at the time, like I didn't understand the storytelling that was going on. And it doesn't start with the first issue of the comics. So I think we got like 8 comics there that are actually in the original trade. But in hindsight, and thanks to all the special features on various documentaries over the years that I see what they were doing and the techniques they used, I always kind of felt that of all the teams that Man of Steel, that John Bogdanove, like he stood apart. Like his style is a little more cartoonish compared to like, say, Jurgens or Grummett. I love so Grummett. His always stood out to me, especially when you get to the people living underground and the Cadmus people. Like there's just a very stylized, cartoony look to him. And I don't think it's bad at all, but it definitely always broke things up for me just a little bit. And that's something he leans into more heavily as he went on the book.
Yeah. I would say I actually appreciated it because it broke up a little bit of the traditional comic book artist. Like Grummett. Look, I love Grummett. Like he's one of my favorite.
Grummett, to me, is like the Jim Aparo of Superman.
Absolutely,
art. It was just so clean, and my favorite. So
he was one.
always
Dude, I
look
love his
forward to
Robin.
Adventures.
Yeah, dude, his
Yeah.
his Robin was incredible. I mean, I love his Robin run with Chuck Dixon. But yeah, I'm with you. I feel like that artist was, I don't know, I didn't know the name, but I think actually I loved him and Louise on Steel. Like when he took yeah, love that stuff. So yeah, anyway,
It-
just want to dive in.
It was
Go ahead.
for someone who wasn't necessarily a Superman guy in my childhood and early teenhood. Like, this was part of the spark really that got me into the character, because like my friend was reading it, so I would borrow his copies before I would start getting my own. And
Mhm.
once this whole arc was over with, I was pretty much on board with like the Triangle storyline for a long, long time. And it
Yeah.
wasn't just that this story had an impact and brought other people into comic shops for the first time because they had to find out what was going on. Just it's not something you would get away with today, like not publishing Superman comics for a little bit. Like, that's crazy that they actually went and did that.
They beat her on the bush at funeral, and they went into it.
No, but they actually did have a little bit of a break, a small one. And the fact that, the internet wasn't I mean, it was just really starting to get around, but all you had to go on was like the next issue boxes. Because this is even like Wizard wasn't really as widespread.
Yeah, it wasn't that
became.
prominent.
Like,
Yeah, it wasn't.
you couldn't
wasn't
go
there yet.
online and read like what the solicits were 3 months in advance. So
We got the solicits, guys.
there was no Reddit, there was no Discord, so you just kind of
Life was
had
simpler
whatever
back
was
then.
in your group, and it just built organically. And the fact
Yeah.
that we had like a great Super Nintendo game that would adapt not only this storyline but the Return of Superman, and like homage certain panels and covers and characters. Like, it was a really faithful side scroller for the time that just kind of added to everything. And it's such a powerful story, not just for what happens at the end, but the storytelling and the heart that it brings to everything.
Mhm.
That they keep trying to go back to that. Well, I mean, it arguably is like the most famous Superman story. Like we pointed out before, like Smallville's taken their crack at it, Snyder took his crack at it, Superman and Lois has. We've had 2 animated movies that have dealt with it. And even like in Justice League, the Justice League Unlimited, like they've paid little homages to it.
Mhm.
Doom, it's set a unique bar that I don't know that we'll ever get something like it again, just because of the way media is
Yeah.
consumed and how we talk about things. So it
Really quick.
it holds up really well. And
Mhm.
I don't know how much of influence this story would have had on James Gunn's Superman, but I think I know you're going to talk about this later. I think it's a good story that you can pretty much hand to anybody and they can understand it.
Hmm.
And there's a little, not both sidesism, but you get to see some of the popular opinions of what people viewed what I even viewed Superman as at the time, through this character, Mitch Anderson, who has to watch a Superman special at school, and because Superman's doing an interview with Cat Grant, and he just couldn't care less until Doomsday attacks and attacks his home, and he's crying for Superman to help. And we see what happens to Mitch in the issues to come, but like he's serving the point of like the general audience who maybe thinks he's out of date and old fashioned, and they want the image, big shoulder pads and guns and the excesses that the 90s are known for, which they also played with later. But
yeah. Well, so really quickly, Josh, what and you don't have to know the names by heart or anything like that, but is there an artist or a creative team on these issues that you you really liked on anything in particular that stuck out to you? Or it could be an artist,
I mean, to me, it was the it was issue 75. I mean,
Yeah.
that team, because to me it's like, yes, there's iconic images from the previous issues, but
Yeah.
there's so many, like every single panel in
Mhm.
this just is like embedded
You're not
in my
wrong.
brain a bit. And like I as I was going to the next page, like it was just like instantly remembered just seeing that like
Mhm.
for the first time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I think this issue overall is my favorite
Me too.
of all of it. But yeah, it's just classic, man. It's just
It is.
it's really really good.
Avi, do we know, because this is by Jurgens and is it Brett? I'll give some
Brett
bad
Breeding.
names. Brett Breeding does now whenever I see this, because if you can throw up the page where I think it has like a hole in Superman over his shoulders and then like over his head, and then I think it has the creative team on it, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't. Do we know how much art of Jurgens is this? Because it says he does the art, and then Brett Breeding does the finishes. I like how much of this is Brett? How, because I don't know each artist very well. How what of the two? Which is the more like prominent of the two in
I mean,
this comic book?
I would say Jurgens.
Okay, that's what I would say too, because I remember Jurgens from from Sensational and some of the other arts. When he did him and George Perez were doing Teen Titans, which by the way, I can't wait to do that binge with you guys.
They're kind of like the Kurt Swan and Murphy Anderson of their day,
okay.
where the artist and the inker like fuse so well that their style is just
got you.
one thing.
That makes sense. Okay, so you're saying so like did Brett do the inking as well?
Yeah, I think primarily he was the inker usually for Jurgens. It's just that Jurgens was also doing Justice League of America.
Oh, okay.
And Superman, so he would I believe he would kind of help him. Well, Justice League of America was Jurgens and Rick Burchett. But I mean, the Jurgens influence, like that's 100%. That's like a Jurgens composition, and
so he now just because like friends would do like layouts for people, and then they would just like do like their own pictures over the layouts basically. But he's doing more like actual like structures and everything like that. People are just going in and doing the fine details for him. When everything else he's done like what 75% of it, and or at least 60 to 75, and then they're just finishing up.
Anything would be speculation on my point, but
okay.
I mean, I look at this and I see the Jurgens in it. Yeah,
that's fair.
And I think this Brett Breeding is just very, for me, his style is so seamless with that Jurgens look that it's synonymous, as opposed to like Superman Alien, which has Kevin Nolan doing the inks, and that just like has a completely, like I can see the Jurgens in it, but it feels so different and pops in a different way. Okay.
So Chris's internet went kaput, unfortunately. So I don't think he'll be rejoining us tonight, unfortunately. So Chris, if you're listening, we love you. We'll get you back on. Maybe we can do a little side episode. Well, hell, I mean, this will be the last time we talk about this freaking story. To be real, I was just telling Josh before, like, we'll probably do like a whole sub series on the death return of Superman by itself, where we analyze things even deeper, right? So, yeah, because of that, let's, I know Josh, you said you had some nitpicks or some qualms on these issues. I'm just curious again. Just curious what those are. I mean, maybe you'll say them and be like, "Oh, you're right. That's legitimately lame." Like I get it. I have no idea. I don't remember. Like I don't have a lot of criticism. I'm curious, what are your criticisms of the story?
I would say, in the first issue, like the underground storyline, I'm just like I'm bored. I mean, I didn't care. I didn't care about it at all. Like I cared about to me, it was like I knew where it was going. So it's like I all I cared about was like Doomsday, Superman,
Sure.
Lois.
Okay.
Like
That's
let's
fair.
just
Okay.
get
Yeah.
that going. This just felt like it was kind of like a weird, I don't know, side quest thing that it just didn't resonate with me. And then I think my only other there were a few like artistic inconsistencies. So there's the one issue where they're fighting and he gets punctured in the side. Superman
Mm,
gets punctured in the side by Doomsday, and they make it a point to have him like gushing blood out of his side, right?
mhm.
And he, there's got to be like a wound there, and there's got to be like blood there and everything. But then panels after that, like there's nothing there. So it was just like little inconsistencies like that kind of I noticed it more now, and it could just be because I'm at the age I am now, so I pick up on those things. Didn't
Sure.
pick up on it at all as a kid when I read this the first time. And then I think the last thing is just like some of the internal monologue stuff gets just a little much,
Puncture.
a
thought
little like on the nose.
the thought
Um,
bubbles.
yeah.
I
For the
love
most
thought.
part, it's fine, but there's a few where it's like, okay, all right, like
You know,
like kind of like enough already.
okay,
But
really quick about thought bubbles. I just want to interrupt about that because I that's a fair criticism. The only thing I'll defend thought bubbles of, especially it's really important because I'm so done with captions in modern comics now because that's now like the new thought bubble. The one thing I like about thought bubbles is that it gives other characters a chance to get inside their heads. And that's one, and I will say that when you're doing a 22-page comic book, a monthly comic book, those thought bubbles are crucial to get new readers and remind them. So when you're reading it as a collection, I totally get it's not as cool as doing it's a little more annoying when you're reading it as a whole opposed to like once a month, right? So I get that criticism. That's one of those things where for me, I just kind of take it. I just kind of take it. But I totally get what you're saying though from that aspect.
and then not a criticism, but I have to shout out the Ginger Abe Lincoln that is Lex Luthor is like iconic.
He
to a
really is
level.
iconic, right?
I mean, forget the bald guy. Like enough with the bald guy. Bring this back. This is fantastic. Oh my goodness. Hot pink hair. I love it.
It's
Fuchsia.
And is this Australian accent too? Don't forget that.
Yeah.
Jeez. Like what's weird is for me when reading this as a non like DC guy, I remember like, why does Lex have hair like now? And why is he with Supergirl? It was just I was just being very confused, because I knew the characters a little better than most new readers would. And I remember just being like, okay, but it never. And I don't.
Did this
I'll get
throw you off then?
I didn't read. I didn't actually read this issue until way later, but like I read some of the other issues that I was a little confused on. I just kind of went with it. So like because I didn't really realize what was going on with this version of Lex really until the Return of Superman. So like the reign of the Superman. I didn't really get into that more until I'm like, oh, what is going on? But yeah. I'll say this kind of what Josh saying. It's not really a criticism. It's just kind of like, whoa, it's kind of if you're not really familiar with this era, that's a very jarring thing for both those things. If you know the characters, if you don't know the characters super well, it doesn't really matter. It's just kind of like, you kind of, they do a good job of kind of setting that up for you. So
you're saying that the general audience doesn't know that the current Supergirl is a protoplasmic blob that thought she was Lana Lang from an alternate Earth where Lex was a good guy and General Zod killed the whole planet?
Woo!
People don't know that?
Gotta love continuity, Javi. Gotta love continuity. All right. Okay, so Josh, that was the last of your kind of qualms.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's, and I would say even then, I mean, they're
I
kind
mean,
of just
like, yeah,
nitpicks. I mean, they're
no,
nitpicks.
but I think the underground thing, the only reason why you have the underground story at the beginning is because it has all those doomsday like stuff. You could cut the story out and just do the doomsday stuff, but your trade's going to be smaller and therefore going to be, spending less money.
Well, it was
So
it was the way they structured it, because at the end of like the 4 issues that preceded like the main story, like it would have a page teasing that Doomsday is coming.
hmm
And like it would punch in every time, like between these 2 images here. That was the month prior. So when you get to the beginning of the arc, he's not encountering everybody yet. So you have like all these other side plots that were going on in the stories that were being told. So it's kind of like, from this modern perspective, to me, it's like whenever the CW would do an event, like it may be like the first part of the event was always like a regular episode for that show, and then the last 5 minutes tied into what was happening. Like you saw it a lot with like Supergirl. Like for some reason they would start like the musical crossover started on her episode for 5 minutes of like, and then she like pops into the end, and then like it really begins in the Flash. And that's kind of what this first Man of Steel issue reminds me of, because we're still dealing with like the Keith of it all, and um Simonson and Bogdanov love dealing with these underworld characters, and that was like a big part of their run. So it was kind of like just juggling 2 things before we really get going, and they really kick off with the whole 5-panel, 4-panel, 3-panel thing.
Yeah.
So really quickly, I wanted to get Tyler's comment here about his opinion on the rereads, and I'm just gonna say that I don't attest to I don't agree with that personally. Mainly because I think oh, sorry guys, I'm the wrong one. I disagree. I think these stories only get better over time. And to be honest, I've been surprised how much I've liked them as I've read them, you know? So that's just kind of been my personal opinion on it, like I think I disagree. I think these have been pretty fun and actually have aged pretty well, to be honest, so
I think
that's
it's
just
back in this era, like from the 60s to the 90s or maybe early 2000s, like you had that theory that this could be someone's first issue. So you're getting the characters recapping something that if it wasn't like, I know all this, you would have like Spider-Man think to himself like all the things that happened last issue, which if you're reading a collected volume, you're like, yeah, I know, I just went with it. And now the way we tell stories is different, to where it's expected that you're going to be reading it in a trade, and it doesn't remind you every 5 panels of what happened before, or they let you read the recap at the start. It's just like you were saying earlier, it's just like you have to get yourself in that mindset of this is how stories were told back then. And so there is a lot of that narration, that dialogue that no human being would actually say to themselves or to other people.
Yeah. Chris is back, so it sounds like his internet is working. Chris, we got a little bit of time left, so do you want to do any of your parting thoughts before I do my little shindig at the end here?
Yeah, just be wary of frozen food falling on the power brick for your modem.
Oh wow!
It'll kill that. It'll kill.
Dang.
Parting thoughts. Well, I'm sorry I missed as much of the conversation as I did. But look, I said it before, I'll say it again. There's a reason that this story lives rent free in so many people's heads. I remember going to when I lived in Chicago, going to Six Flags Great America. There is a roller coaster there called Superman Ultimate Flight. and through the queue of the entire ride are like placards with images of different characters from Superman's world with short biographies for each one, and they're all ripped right out of this story. You know, Lex Luthor the Second, Matrix Supergirl, Connor before he was Connor Kent, you know, Superboy, the Boy of Steel, Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator. They're all there, and I think that coaster opened like in the late 90s, but that is just like, it occurred to me the first time I was there that, oh my goodness, this is such a time capsule of that of moments when the entirety of American pop culture just seemed absolutely obsessed with what was going on in current monthly superhero titles. I don't know if we'll ever see that again. You know, nowadays the hype machine for superheroes is pretty much exclusively reserved for other media adaptations. So it's really fun for me to see artifacts of the time where really it was the comics that were front and center. And you had creators who had a really great and innate understanding of everything that Superman is and everything that he represents, telling this story in the hands of a, let's say, less responsible creative team. This story would not be nearly as good. It would feel exclusively like a stunt. And granted, there are a lot of people who still feel that it is a stunt. I mean, for all intents and purposes, it fits the definition of a stunt. But the substance of the story really is what shines when you read it. There's nothing here that feels out of left field for everybody that you see. Superman is confronted with something that actually has the power and ability to end his life, and the way that he faces down that doomsday speaks to everything that's great about him. You know, everything that we want him to be when the chips are down and when he knows that his back is up against the wall. His first responsibility that he feels is to protect the people that are around him. And you know, it's the prototypical example in my mind of a hero's death. You know, we've seen a lot of really other great examples in other media, certainly, and in comics, of course. But you know, Superman does not shy away from what he needs to do, even though he knows what's going to happen, really, at the end of the day. I mean, he talks about it over the course of the story. And he's not beyond feeling fear for himself. That early moment in the Justice League America number 69, where he is talking on stage with Cat Grant, and that person in the audience asks him, "Aren't you scared?" And he's honest. "Yes, I am. And there have been times that I've feared for myself, but the duty comes first." And, you know, how someone I appreciate from another universe once said, how we deal with death is almost as important as how we deal with life. And, you know, when any of our times come, I'd like to think that maybe we can take some inspiration from that. You know, Superman has some special circumstances. He has the ability to come back from that. None of us are going to be able to do that. But hopefully, you know, we can proceed with the same sort of resolve that he does, even knowing that it's coming. So it's a weird reminder of our own mortality in a way, even though you're talking about a Kryptonian in a red cape. But I think there's something to take some odd comfort from when reading this story, and just seeing that, you know, we have the ability to make of that what we will. And on top of the fact that this is just a kick-ass comic book story with great characterization, beautiful artwork from pretty much everybody involved. Like I said, there's a reason this story lives rent-free in so many people's heads.
Wow. That is, as always, the Reverend delivers the goods. And as at the very end, and almost like saying, "All right, good night, everybody. We'll see you all next time." So, but before we promote ourselves, you know, I have my parting thoughts here, Javi. If you could throw up just the basic Superman Death of cover for me, that'd be great. You can pick. I don't care which one you do. So if those who don't know by now, I do a little grading system, a little pitchfork style, if you will, where I grade the comic or story we read, whether it be my overall rating and then my new reader-friendly rating. And if you know Pitchfork Media at all, you understand what I'm doing. All right, first up is always what I consider my overall rating of the story. And this is my personal view. It's an out of 10. I give Death of Superman, the 5 issues we read?
8.
Right? 8.9. I think this comic's a lot more closer to a masterpiece, in my opinion, than people give it credit for. I love it a lot. It just keeps getting better every time I read it, and I think it's just like Dan Jurgens, like what Josh said earlier. Issue 75 is just chef's kiss, full of great work, and Breeding and Jurgens together, it's magnificent, and those splash pages are just incredible. So, I love the story.
Don't
I'm not at 75 specifically.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. But you were gone. I was singing the praises of Grummet too. So
I believe you.
Dude, I freaking love his Robin. So enough said.
Yeah. So one question I want to pose to everybody here: Superman number 75, Batman 497.
Oh, 75. Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
75.
All right. Okay. Javi?
75.
All right.
It has to be.
You made me say it.
I don't even see how it was a competition. That's just me.
I think Batman 497 is a banger of an issue too.
No, it's a great issue.
Yeah.
And I would argue almost as influential as the story.
Almost.
But the story came first and set the bar really, really high.
Yeah.
So my next and lastly is my new reader-friendly grade. That, my friends, is going to be a steady 9.0. Which I think
higher than I thought you were going to go, to be honest.
Yeah. I think anyone can read this story and get everything they needed to and be just fine. I think anyone can read this and jump right in. And like, again, Josh made some great points about how this is very cinematic because of how you were saying, Chris, how it builds. To me, it feeds into that. People who are newer into comics don't have to be like, what do I read? Like, it's just like, oh, it's very quick and very. And again, there's a pro and a con to that. And I think, but this story specifically, it's all pros.
See, we should have talked about this more at the beginning because I kind of have strong feelings about this.
Well, trust me, Chris, this will not be the last time we talk about the story. I'm positive.
Probably not. It's just like, is this really the first Superman story you want to put in someone's hand where he dies?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because it's good. Put the best stories in people's hands, and they will get into comic books. Period. End story.
What was your new reader-friendly rating for Birthright?
I don't even remember. I want to say it might be the same or a little bit lower. The point, the decimal system is just me being a dickwad towards Pitchfork Media.
It's a valid conversation because this is such an accessible story, but it's just like right when it gets good and then he's dead.
But I think that's it's like, is it better to burn out or to fade away? You know what I mean? Come on, I mean, like that's what Highlander said. So, or one of the Highlanders.
Nice thing about Superman.
That's what Lex Luthor said.
I think it's a great conversation though to like, if you were going to choose a Superman story to give it to somebody as their first intro into the comics, what would it be?
You know what? That's a future episode. Post Superman story. There you go. Maybe we'll have you on and make you read all these other comics.
Available, my friend.
Yeah,
that will be available.
All right, just Josh, as my friend Rob would always say, yes. You ask me if I'm available 8 months from now, and so I'll be like, yes. But no, I would say keep your options open end of July because I probably will be we'll be calling your name again for at least for that before. So, all right, let's wrap this up. Josh, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you like taking time out and flexing, being flexible with your schedule with my huge mistake. That was my fault. I'm sorry, everybody, about that. It was supposed to be yesterday. I screwed up. But anyway, thanks for coming on, man. It's great having you again. Do you have anything you're promoting right now or anything like that?
Go see the new Superman movie.
Well, there you go. Good enough for me. So you'll like I said, you'll be back on, if not before. At least we'll get you on for. I'll probably have a similar thing like with Deadpool. We'll probably have loads of people on. People have like a main review of the three of us, and then we'll have like a friend review. I'll have like a bunch of the homies get on like you and just play like Deadpool, and just kind of rotate people in and out. That sounds kind of fun. Maybe I'll do that. Anyway, yeah, thanks for coming on, man. In this whole best comic to read for new Superman fans, get ready and go read a lot of the issues we read before, because they're gonna be on there. Javi, Hopster, El Corazon, I know you got lots going on. Tell us what's going on.
The 007 Files is a James Bond podcast I do with two other gentlemen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. I think we're on Amazon now. We have an episode with author Steve Rubin coming out this week. He's done the James Bond Encyclopedia and even moderated one of the commentaries on the now banned Criterion James Bond films that were on Laserdisc. He did From Russia with Love. So we talked to him. Up to Speed with Wally West. I've got a review of Absolute Flash #1 that you can go check out. That dropped last week, which is really weird that it was already a week because it feels like yesterday. Batman on Film, the usual stuff. Catwoman, Batman and Robin Year One, Batmanimation coming out tomorrow. Did a chapter by chapter that came out this week talking about Batman Forever. I made a cameo on Spidey Dude Experience tonight, talking Ultimate Spider-Man 15, and there is another. Put it this way: if you're not listening to Digging for Kryptonite by Anthony Desiato, Chris has been on the show. Maybe some other guy is going to be on in the very, very near future. You should probably check it out. He's talking about the Jeff Loeb and that era of Superman comics, the early 2000s. So maybe go to Digging for Kryptonite and give Anthony a listen. He's got a lot of great Superman content on there. So
I need to check the show out.
Nice. You should.
Yeah,
it's really good. Chris has been on
and other comic shows too, not just Nights and this. Come on, sir, you're on quite a bit. You're are the Binge, Javi. You are the Binge
more often than not. So
yeah, I know. I try to get you on more than you probably like. No, I don't need another thing. I'm like, I know.
This is our special time.
This is definitely our special time. There's no doubt about that. Oh, that's good. All right, Reverend, please.
Be sure to be on the lookout for the next episode of Nights Never Die. Grant Morrison's Batman issue by issue, because our next one is Batman number 668, the second part of the Island of Mr. Mayhew. First part was fun. Check out our discussion of it. Yep, and the train continues, and we're barreling ahead to really the some very fascinating Batman stories over the next several issues. We still have to determine what we're going to be doing with the Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul crossover. Javi and I had a little bit of a discussion about it last time, but other than that, Discovery Debrief, a Star Trek podcast, is on a little bit of a break because Section 31, the movie, just broke us because of how bad it was. So but once we figure out a path forward, I think Cicero Holmes is going to be sharing a commentary track while he was watching it. So that might be our next episode. But of course, everything we've got coming down the pike in the Comic Binge, be sure to stay here, like the video, leave a comment below if you're not watching it live, subscribe to it so we can maybe spread the word a little bit more to more comic book fans and just the joy of the medium at large and superheroes generally speaking as well. Other stuff too, but we like superheroes, not a problem.
I love the comic medium. I mean, I want to do more like non-superhero stuff, which I want to, but right now it's just been like a lot of fun stuff to read. I'm, the whole Superman Knights Never Die with Fantastic Four coming out. Like I'm just, I'm in it to win it, man. So, but definitely, I will definitely dive into more non-superhero stuff. I think after the movies, after the summer, especially with some horror stuff coming out. I'll try to get my friend, maybe my friend Cookie back on and see if she can get me on some her crazy comics she reads. Or other people too. So there'll be other non-superhero stuff coming out too. But that's me and Chris's and Javi's passion. We love superhero comics, so whatever. Okay, we only do what we can do, right? So anyway, go subscribe to the Comic Binge if you haven't already. I appreciate everyone who already has, and go read more comics, right? So I guess go for it.
Read more comics.
All right, everybody, good night, and go don't die, because the Superman's good story to read or something. I don't